Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will build a REST API with Node.js, TypeScript and MongoDB. We will build a simple back-end service that will encompass a simple username and password authentication system. This API will allow our users to create pools, fetch pools they've created, and also fetch pools that other users have created. It will also allow the owner of a pool to add options to an existing pool and allow all users to vote on an existing pool. This is surely going to be quite the ride. However, I have a nice surprise for you. If you've been watching our videos, you know that I really like using TypeRM with MongoDB anytime I'm working on a back-end project. However, I'm going to switch things up for today and go for a different ORM instead. So make sure you stick around so you find out which one we are going to use, okay? If you think that's a great idea, make sure you absolutely smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you can get access to all of our videos in the future as they drop. So let's dive into what we have, okay? This video will be a two-part series, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can watch both parts of the videos, okay? In today's video, we'll work on the authentication part of the server, and on the second video, we'll work on the poll service, okay? I'm going to open up a terminal and navigate to the folder where I store all of my work projects, especially my back-end projects. Then I'll create a new directory poll backend, which I'll navigate into and open it up inside of VS Code. Then I'll open up a terminal inside of VS Code and run npm init --y, and this command creates a new package.json file inside of this directory. Then I will go ahead and run npm install express and course. After express and course is done installing, I'm going to install the type definitions for them, and I'll make sure I use the -d flag to ensure that these dependencies are installed as development dependencies. So after these development dependencies are done installing, I'm going to go ahead and install Mongoose. Then I'll create a new file, index.ts. After that, I'll install TypeScript globally and run tsc -init to generate a new tsconfig.json file. Then I'll open up the tsconfig.json file and paste in some configurations. Inside the index.ts file, I will import Express from Express and use that Express we just imported to create a new Express app. Then I'll import course from course and ensure we use the course middleware on our app. After which I will call app.listen on port 3000 while console logging that the server has started on port 3000. Then I'll open up the package.json file and add a new script dev, which will be tsc-w. Then I'll also add another one, build, which will be tsc. In fact, I'm going to change the dev script to nodemon index.ts because nodemon is going to be able to handle all of the hot reloading for us. I will run npm install nodemon to install nodemon from the terminal, and then I'm going to run npm run dev from the terminal to start up the server. And you can see that we get an error, ts node is not recognized. And that's because we forgot to install it. So let's do that now by running npm install ts node, okay? And after that, I'm going to hit npm run dev again. We get a message in our console, server running on port 3000. Then I'll close the server and import Mongoose into the index.ts file and call the mongoose.connect function with a URL that points to our local MongoDB instance. Mongoose.connect function allows us to connect to a MongoDB database, and since it is a promise, I'll chain a .dem function to it. Inside of this function, I'm going to start up the server, and then I'll add a catch block to handle any errors that arise from either connecting to the database or starting up our server. I'll open up the command prompt and run mongo to start up my local MongoDB database, and then back inside of VS Code, I will run npm run dev from the terminal, and you can see that we get the message server running on port 3000. I will add a console log statement right before we start the server, which reads connected to the database, just to be sure that our database connection is successful before starting our server. And I'm going to save this file to reload our server. And you can see that we get both statements in the console. You can see that we get connected to the database first, and then we get server running on port 3000. Next, I'm going to create a file named data/schema/pool/index.ts, and inside this file I will import schema from Mongoose. Then I will create a variable pool schema, which I will export from this file. This will be equal to a new schema. Then I will create a new file in the schema folder. This will be named user/index.ts. Then I'll also import the Mongoose schema into this file. I will create and export a user schema object from this file by instantiating the new schema class. Then I will add a username property, which in itself an object. It will have a type property, which is a string constructor, and a require property, which is true. And this is how we define the document schema when working with Mongoose. The user schema will also have a password property, which has a type property, which is a string constructor, and a required property, which is true. It will also have a name property with a type property, which is also a string constructor, and a required property, which is true. Now, the schema constructor accepts a second argument, which is a config object, and I'm just going to set this timestamps property here to true. This ensures that all documents created from this schema will automatically have a created arc property and an updated arc property. Then I'll create a services/index.ts file inside the data folder. In fact, I'll create a new folder inside the services folder, and then I'll drag the index.ts file inside the user folder. And in fact, I will rename the data folder to src. I will create a new file, types.ts, inside src folder, and inside this file I will export an interface user which extends from a document. The document interface can be imported from Mongoose. The user type has a username property, which is a string, a password property, which is a string, a name property, which is a string. Then we will export an interface user model, which extends a model interface. The model type is also imported from Mongoose. We strongly type the model to be of a user document, and this will enable us to get a strongly typed Mongoose model, so we can get full auto completion when we use the model later. Okay, we define a create function on the user model interface, and this will accept a payload, which is an object with a username property, a password property, and a name property, all of which are strings, and it will return a promise which resolves to a user. Then I will add a get user by name property, which accepts a username argument, which is a string, and it returns a promise which resolves to a user. Then I will add a get all users function, which returns the promise which resolves to a user. We head back to the services/user/index.ts file, where I will import the user schema into this file. I will chain a call to user schema.statics.create user, which will be equal to an async function which accepts an object of user type as its argument. With the structure add the username property, the name property, and the password property. Then I will navigate into the user schema file, where I will strongly type user schema to be a schema of the user interface. Then I will run npm install bcrypt to install bcrypt from the terminal, and when that is done, I will also install the type definitions for bcrypt. Then I will create a new file, helper.ts, inside the src folder. Inside this file, we will create and export an async function hash password, which will accept an argument password, which is a string. Then I will import hash and gen sort from bcrypt. Inside the hash password, I will return a call to the hash function. This function is used to hash a user's password, and it accepts two arguments. The first is the password string to be hashed, while the second is the sort round. So we'll call await gen sort while passing in 16 as the sort rounds for hashing. This ensures that given the same string, it will produce a slightly different hash each time. I'm going to define another async function, verify password, which accepts two arguments, password, which is a string, and a user password, which is also a string. Then I will import compare from bcrypt. I will return a call to the compare function. This function accepts two arguments. The first is the password we want to compare, while the second is the hash we want to compare the password against. And one beautiful thing about Mongoose is that it allows us to write functions that can run before and after a database event, or before/after an event on the model or the document. So taking this into account, I will attach a function to the user schema to run just before a user schema record is created in the database. This function will just hash the user's password before saving the user record. Inside the user schema, .statics.create user function, we will return a call to this.create, and inside of this function, this will be the user model. I will attach another async function to the user schema.static.login method. This function will accept an object with a username property and a password property, okay, both of which are strings. Inside this function, I will try to fetch an existing user by their username, and if the user does not exist, they want to throw an error incorrect credentials. Next, we check if their passwords match by importing and calling the verify password function. If their password do not match, then I'll also throw an error incorrect credentials. Then I will return the existing user from the function. Then I will create a variable user service, which is the result of calling the model function. The model function is imported from Mongoose and it allows us to create a new model. It accepts two arguments, the name of the model, which we serve as the name of the collection for the documents created, and then a schema to describe the shape of the documents in the collection. Then I will create a new file, controller/user/index.ts. And inside of this file, I will create and export the function create user. This function accesses two arguments, a HTTP request object and a HTTP response object. Inside the function, I will extract the username, the password, and the name variable from the request body. Then I will add a try catch block, and inside the catch block, I will send back any errors caught in the application back to the client with a 400 status. Inside the try block, I will try to create new user accounts by importing the user service model from the services/user file. Then I'll call the create user method on the user service while passing the right arguments to the function. I will send back the newly created user to the client. Then I will define and export another function, login, which is an async function. This is also another root handler/controller function, and as such, it will also accept a HTTP request object and a HTTP response object. I will add the username and the password from the request body, and I will add a try catch block. Inside the catch block, I will send back any errors caught in the application back to the client the 400 status, and then I will attempt to log in the user by calling the login method on user service. But let's pause it here first and head over to the types.ts file to add the login method to the user model interface. I will head back to the controller/user/index.ts file where I will continue with the login function implementation. Then I will send back the user to the client. I will create a new file inside the src named routes/index.ts, and inside of this file, I will import the router function from Express. Then I will create a new router object by calling the router function. I will register a post request to /create while pass in the create user function as the root handler function. I also register another post request to /login while passing the login function as the root handler to this route, okay? I will export the router object as default from this file, and I will head back to the root index file where I will import the router object and register it onto the Express app. Then I will run npm run dev from the terminal to get our server running. Then I will create a new file .http at the root level of the project. This will help us to test the route in our app. Inside this file, I will attempt to create a user with a username of Kalashin, a password of test1234, and a name Killer something. You can see that the user account is created successfully and the results returned matches the structure of a MongoDB document. I will attempt to log in the user with a password of test123 and a username of Kalashin, and you can see that we get our user back in the result tab. Okay, this is going to be it for the authentication part of our application. Hope you absolutely like this video. Then make sure you leave it a like, subscribe to the channel so you can see the second part of our video where we work on creating a poll with MongoDB, Mongoose, TypeScript, and Node.js. Okay, and I'm going to see you in the next one.